My name is Sam, and I have some really intense things to tell you about, which I've recently witnessed. To bring you up to speed, I've lost my 6-year job when COVID struck. As a result, I've had plenty of free time to spend at home. And fortunately for me, I was able to find a databasing job online, so I can now work from home. But now, all of this leads to the narrative I'd want to tell you. I, like many of the people who write to you, live in a remote area. My surroundings aren't as stereotypical as others may imagine. No, I am not surrounded by thick forests, woodlands, or anything similar. Surrounding me is a lot of dead zone or abandoned agricultural farmland. I am not sure if it is not owned or if the owner is simply neglecting it. In any case, just behind my present rental home is a massive field that is now unused. I'm very sure the vast field behind my house was formerly used for hay harvesting, despite the large tire tracks and tractor marks. The sides of my house are also very bleak, with huge empty fields and a few trees here and there, but not much coverage. And just in front of my house, there is about 50 feet of grass and a small road that leads around the area. There aren't many neighbors out here, so I'm pretty much alone. Fortunately for me, I had good internet and obtained the house for a good price. It is an older building, yet it provides adequate shelter and safety. Anyway, now that I've given you enough information to help you comprehend my dilemma, here's where my story begins. So, as previously said, I lost my job in early April and have spent the majority of the last 6 months at home. Yikes, right? Well, that's what comes with living in the middle of nowhere. No one truly wants to pay you a visit. So I've spent a lot of time pursuing new hobbies and finding a new databasing job, and all of this is relevant because now that I'm at home, I'm able to see things I never noticed before. I've been living here for about 3.5 years, and my previous job kept me so busy and out of the house that I doubt I would have noticed this if I hadn't misplaced it. But since I've been home so regularly, I've been more aware of this phenomenon, as I like to call it. What exactly am I discussing? Well, I know this sounds strange, and I believed I was insane until I decided to go around online, mainly on YouTube, and discovered that there are thousands upon thousands of individuals who have had very identical sightings and experiences to me. What I'm talking about are large, upright, walking wolves, and not just 1, 2, or even 3. I'm talking about an entire pack, like 8 or 9 of them. How many is traditionally in a pack of wolves, I'm not sure, and I'll see them occasionally in the evening or early morning hours, roaming in a tight, militant unit, walking from one end of the field to the other, far beyond my visibility. They don't seem to be interested in my house or approaching close me. They are far from the field, yet these animals, entities, or whatever you want to call them, are so huge that they stand out like a sore thumb. Lucky for them, there's no one else out here to view them, no wandering guests passing by, and the road in front of my house, despite being a public roadway, is quite dead. There could be 5 or 6 cars driving past there all day, which is quite a lot, and that is what I consider a busy day. I suppose I should be more scared by this experience, but after seeing it multiple times over the last few months, I haven't gotten tired or terrified of these things, but rather interested about this weird phenomena. I'm not sure what they are, or if they're human, part human, or animal, because as far as I know, there is no canid species that walks erect like a man and walks in a group. Unfortunately, because they're so far away, I can't offer you information about how they look, such as the color of their fur or any other precise traits they may have. But I can tell they're canid creatures who are plainly bipedal. And that is plenty for me. At first I considered the possibility of werewolves, but soon disregarded the idea since, well, 1, it's absurd, and 2, werewolves don't exist. If these are unknown animals, I believe there is a good reason to explain their presence and why they are present. They always appear to be traveling from the same place, A, to point B. Point A is that when you step out my back door, all the way to the back of the field, to the far right, they appear to be approaching from that direction. Then they continue all the way to point B, which is on my far left at the opposite end of the field. I'm not sure why they never come close to the house or seem to be interested. At first, I didn't believe it, but after hearing multiple stories and encounters, I formed a different opinion about these things, believing they were bloodthirsty and intended to create fear in their victims. I don't try to hide my existence in this house. I'm not particularly loud or obnoxious, but I don't disguise the fact that I live here, so I'm sure they know. I don't see them every day, every morning, or every night, but I do see them frequently, perhaps a few times a week, and it's always in the early morning or in the evening, around 6 or 7 p.m., just as dusk begins to set. Part of me wonders if these predatory animals are patrolling the perimeter of an area that they claim as their own. I've never tried walking to the back of the field. Sure, I stepped foot on the field itself to check it out when I first moved in, which is why I told you about the tire marks and tractor marks, which lead me to believe that this field was once used for hay harvesting, but now that no one owns or uses it, it's pretty much just a dead field of grass and dirt. Which leads me to believe that these creatures are coming from a long distance away, where there are woods. But when I say far from the distance, I mean a couple miles away. As I previously stated, the fields around me are barren, with only a few trees dotted throughout. When I say a few trees, I actually mean a few trees. One tree here and one tree there. Very sparsely scattered out, with almost no coverage for shadows or hiding spots. So, I'm not sure where these creatures are coming from or where they're going, and if they are who they claim to be, based on stories and interactions on your YouTube alone, why would they want to disclose themselves in this way? Why would they put themselves in such a vulnerable position in front of others? I don't think they realized nobody else was out here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject and what you think they're doing, because I'm quite convinced the only thing that can explain what this is a dogman. But why would they be out here in the middle of nowhere, displaying themselves and being utterly exposed with nowhere to hide or cover? Part of me believes that if I travel further down the field, there may be underground tunnels, but I have no confirmation of any of this, and it's just a wild assumption. About 10 years ago, I was going home from visiting my folks. My then 3-year-old kid was fast asleep in the back. So, when I couldn't fight off the urge to use the restroom any longer, I pulled off the interstate at the first rest area I could locate. I knew I should have gone to the restroom with my parents, but you know how it is when you're trying to hurry out of there and don't want anything to slow you down? I decided to attempt to wait until I got home, but this definitely did not work for me. Despite appearing like something out of a serial killer movie, I hurried over to the ladies' room, leaving my kids snoozing in the van. There was no one else nearby, so I'd be quick. It felt like a less painful choice than waking him awake and hauling him, kicking and screaming, into the unclean bathroom with me. I dashed back to the car, where I discovered my child awake and peering out the window avidly. He didn't seem upset about waking up in an unfamiliar environment, with no mama in sight. So I counted my blessings and rolled with it. We swiftly returned to the roadway. Thank the Lord, he still appeared to be disoriented. You know, the way preschoolers feel when they first wake up, like they don't know where they are. Plus, he was nursing on a juice box, so it took him a little time to speak. He asked me a question, and I responded by glancing in my rearview mirror directly at him. He merely tells me he spotted a huge dog. I asked him, "A big dog?" I asked almost absent-mindedly, not really questioning it as a kid, because kids typically recall things they saw a month ago with no context, and a 3-year-old might have easily seen a dog that he would have deemed large. But it was late at night and there was nobody else around. In retrospect, there was, or should have been, nobody walking their Great Dane or huge dog around. I mean, it does happen, but most likely not. My son went on to say that this dog was really huge, exactly like Daddy, and I remember asking him, "Like Daddy?" It almost made me chuckle. My husband is 6'2", thus he would be considered quite tall. My son continued responding, "Yes, Mama, tall like Daddy." This is what I told him. We kept driving for a bit, not thinking much until I noticed a sign for a roadside diner and decided it might be a good idea to stop for an early dinner. We pulled into a parking space and I got out to stretch my legs. I unbuckled my son, pulled him into my arms, and closed the door. Something on the roof of the car caught my eye, a dent, and what appeared to be multiple scratches that had not been there when we departed for our trip. I cursed, instantly becoming enraged. What on earth could have caused that? Those markings were not present when I left my parents. My son gazed into my eyes with a sad expression on his face and said, "I told you, Mama, it was the big dog." Have you ever felt absolute dread? You know, when your skin is covered with goose flesh and you feel ill to your stomach, as if the pit of your stomach is sucking in everything around it? It feels like death. "What dog it?" I inquired. He told me the large one from where she went potty. I returned to the marks on the roof. There was no way any dog could have created those. I asked him, "What do you mean, a big dog?" I continued asking, hoping he'd make sense, but begging for a 3-year-old to understand is like asking for a miracle. My son looked at me calmly and stated, "Yes, Mama, the big doggy, tall like Daddy. With the doggy face, when you went potty, he came over to the car to see me. He stood very close and then went away. I believe he heard you coming back." I will never know exactly what my son saw that day. He's a teenager now and a complete brat, but I still adore him, and he hasn't addressed it in years, but I'll never forget. In fact, I've tried talking to my kid about it for a while, but he doesn't recall. Obviously, at 3 years old, you can't really recall those types of memories unless they're really precise or painful. But I'll never know what happened that night. Fast forward a few years, when my kid was 7 or 8, and we ended up getting rid of the automobile, so I don't have any evidence, but I'll never know what exactly climbed on top of the car, and who knows if it was genuinely planned to wait and try to steal my son from the vehicle.